Real quick, all the products mentioned in this video are available on my website, BeRAD-products.com. There's a link in the description. Please go check it out. It really helps support this channel and making more videos. In this video series, I break down my dirt bike motors and show you guys how the various components are holding up given the performance modifications I've made. In the last video, we tore apart my 2020 YZ250X motor, full top and bottom end inspection. So if you haven't seen that video, please go check it out. In this video here, we are going to be inspecting my 2021 YZ250X, which has 130 hours on it. In the last 125X video, I mentioned that I'll be testing Dix oil, both for premix and clutch/gear oil, on both the 125 and this 250 here. So since this bike was brand new, other than the factory break-in, whatever was in the fuel, and the gear oil, probably for 1 or 2 hours. Other than that, it's all been Dix CS2T premix and 80 weight gear oil. So I'm very excited to see how the oil's performing. Let's just break it down and take a look. Along with the Dix oil, I've been running the Freight Train kit that I've put together, which you can find on my website, BeRAD-products.com. This consists of performance parts such as the funnel web air filter, the Electron-Billetron carburetor, Boyson rad valve, and the apex head. Now, on the apex head, I've alternated between all three domes. On the 250, there's the XC dome, which is the lowest compression, the MX dome, which is mid compression, and the SX dome, which is the highest compression. For lower elevation riding, my preference has definitely been the MX dome. Since it's mid compression, you get a really snappy hit off bottom, but it's nothing uncontrollable. The SX dome's a little too aggressive, and the XC, for my likings, a little too mellow in normal riding conditions. When I am riding in high elevation areas such as Idaho, where I actually filmed this top end rebuild, I do really love the SX dome. When you're lugging first and second gear up super steep hills, it really helps you get that power you need. I'm super excited to see what the cylinder and piston look like. I've absolutely put this bike through the ringer compared to any other bikes I've had in terms of getting it super hot and just putting it through a lot of abuse in the hard enduro situations it's really spent for the whole 130 hours. So here we go. Let's see what it looks like. Come on, you can do it, Brad. There you go. All right, let's pause it right here. I'm not gonna lie, that looks a little weird to me. I've never done a top end and seen the piston coated with this kind of brown tinge to it. I think I'm gonna call up Dick from Dix Oil and see what's going on here. Hey Dick, it's Brad here. I just took apart my YZ250X top end. I'm at 130 hours now, and I noticed the piston, the bearing, and pretty much all the components inside have this kind of weird brown tinge to it. Now, it's not really concerning because the piston's actually in the best shape I've ever seen. There's not a scratch on it. The cylinder looks really clean. Everything was functioning just fine. I've just never seen this kind of staining, I'll call it. So I was wondering if you had any insight on what that is or why it's happening. I will say I've boiled the bike over a number of times, and most of its life has been spent, you know, getting really high temperatures on steep hills, stuff that without a radiator fan, it really probably shouldn't be doing. So it's been very hot most of its life. That's the only thing I can think of that might be causing this.
Hi, Brad. When engine internal temperatures get very hot, you're going to see this type of coking or varnishing. Coke and varnish, or coke is just a fancy way of saying carbon, they're the byproducts of oil vaporizing and flashing off or even burning. In order for this to occur, the engine components, and here we're looking at the piston, the cylinder, and the head, they need to exceed the temperature of the least volatile component of the oil. This is usually represented in the flash point. When an engine gets hot, and in your case really hot, the oil starts to break down. Now, as scary as this sounds, it's not a problem as long as the oil retains its lubricity. Before modern oils, castor oil was super popular and successful because its property of creating a varnish rather than burning and failing at extremely high temperatures. Two-stroke oils, they're a mixture of several different components, and ours is no different. What you're seeing here is the Stoddard solvent, our thinning agent, and some of the mineral base stocks starting to flash and burn off. Now I want to be very clear, this is a small percent of the total oil. The majority of the oil is still doing its job keeping the engine lubricated. Now, as you mentioned, other than the dark coloring of the parts, the components show very little, if any, wear. This is proof the oil film remains sufficient to provide protection even under these extremely hot conditions. And one of the major reasons the engine showed so little wear, even under these circumstances, is that an appropriate gas-to-oil mix ratio was used. Now, I don't want to get too much into the whole gas-to-oil ratio debate, but as evidenced here, mixed at 40:1, this engine was able to be run extremely hard and hot and showed zero signs of adverse wear. Always choose an appropriate gas-oil ratio for the type of riding and conditions you're expecting to experience. The harder you ride, the faster you ride, and the hotter the conditions, the better served you will be with more oil of any type of brand. Now, why would our oil leave a film and synthetic oil not leave any? Well, I don't want to get too technical, and I'd be happy to get very technical if people are interested in it, and I can make an in-depth video about it. But put as simply as possible, and my apologies to the chemists and chemical engineers out there, typically speaking, synthetic oils using two-stroke oil, and we're namely talking about 3 chemicals here, and they're families of chemicals: polyalpha olefins, diesters, and a really cool chemical called polyisobutylene. They burn significantly slower than their mineral oil counterparts. They're also way more precise in their chemical composition, meaning that we know exactly what these chemicals are and what they decompose into. Mineral oil, on the other hand, through the cracking process and the refining process, they're not nearly as precise in their chemical makeups. They're going to leave behind deposits, being that they're in varying length hydrocarbons. Now, the reason why we chose to go mineral versus synthetic is mineral oil is typically, and again, apologies to the chemists out there, it burns faster and significantly faster in some cases than their synthetic counterparts. Our goal when designing this oil was to make an oil that would burn in the combustion chamber rather than, in the case of many synthetics, lose a lot of energy into the exhaust system. What this does is it gives you increased performance, specifically can be felt in throttle response. So mineral oils by their very nature, they just don't burn as cleanly as their synthetic cousins, but they do have a use case for better throttle response and more power. So that's why you're seeing what you're seeing.
Well, that absolutely answers my question and then much more. So thanks a lot for sharing that response. Yeah, that clears up really my concern about the coloring. Everything, the piston, the cylinder, the bearings, everything was still functioning perfectly fine. Obviously, there's a little blow-by on the piston from the rings. So due to the high heat, that's what I assume caused slightly what I'd consider premature wear on the rings, but everything else looks good. Rings are cheap, throw a new one in, good to go for a long time to come. So full disclosure, this is actually the second time I've had the top end apart. Unfortunately, at around 85 hours, I had a severe clutch basket malfunction. A whole finger on the clutch basket blew apart and got sent through the bottom end. So I had to take things apart, clear out all the shrapnel, re-put everything back together. I ended up replacing the basket with a billet basket. I guess with the cast OEM baskets, this is a pretty common problem, just due to defects in the casting process. So unfortunately, I drew the short stick on this bike and had to deal with this, but luckily nothing else was damaged. I put the same crank back in, all the same top end components, so really it was just a pain in the butt. But in terms of affecting, this video, really no change there. All the same components went back together, rings, everything. But yeah, it was a pain in the butt. Hopefully this doesn't happen again with the new billet basket. And as you can see, no damage to the gears or anything. But the positive side is I got better at doing a bottom end, so no big deal. Well, all seems to be running good on the old rebuild here. Very happy with it. It's making good power. Can't say it was down on power before the rebuild, but since we had that little bit of piston ring wear, definitely good to swap things out and get it fresh. So really happy with how it's running. All feeling good. Everything's great. Well, now that I've tested it and proven it's good oil, don't forget to go to my website and check it out. I've got a bunch of it in stock, the CS2T, 80 weight, and 10W40 if you want to rock it in a 4-stroke. Also, as always, got a bunch of Billatrons in stock. This whole cupboard's full of Electrons, Apex heads, Boyson products, just added Gelfer products, a bunch of stuff. Go check it all out. It helps support my business, and making videos like this, I'd really appreciate it. The link is in the bio. You can either find things on my homepage or go to vendors down to Dick's Oil, and it's all available there. We can go to BeRAD's Best, and that's all my top selling stuff as well. So super easy to find. I keep it all in stock and typically ship very, very fast.